On April 7th of this year, a book was released in bookstores that most newspapers didn't even review. Inside, almost in passing, as if it were a normal occurrence, is a phrase uttered by Pope Francis while he was still alive. A phrase about Robert Francis Prevost, now Leo XIV. That sentence is now at the center of everything. Because 14 days after that book hit the bookstores, Leo XIV wrote something about X that no Catholic theologian can ignore. By the end of this video, you'll understand why these two events, the book and the tweet, together change the rules of the game forever. You will understand why, if this mechanism works, any criticism of the Latin Mass, of Amoris Laetitia, of Fiducia Supplicans automatically becomes impossible. Impossible not because it's forbidden. Impossible because you don't criticize a saint. You don't correct a saint. You don't raise doubts with a saint. Let's get down to brass tacks. The book is called Padre. It was written by Salvatore Cernusio, a journalist for Vatican News, one of the very few Francis allowed into his room during his final days. The publisher is PMA. Cernusio recounts an episode that took place at Santa Marta. Francis, in a private conversation, spoke of Robert Francis Prevost, then still a cardinal, prefect of the dicastery of bishops, and he said textually, "He is a saint." Cernusio specifies that at that moment he did not imagine that Prevost would become pope. And this is precisely what makes this testimony all the more valuable. It's not a retrospective reconstruction constructed after the election. It's a snapshot of what Francis really thought long before the conclave opened its doors. To understand the weight of these words, you need to know who Salvatore Cernusio is. He's not an outside commentator. He's not a critic. It was intimate with Francis. What it documents is not an opinion. It is a direct testimony of how the late Pope constructed his vision for the future of the Church. Pay attention to this detail. To understand why Francis called Prevost a saint, you have to look at how he built his career over the course of 10 years, with a precision that now is impossible to ignore. In 2015, Francis appointed Provost Bishop of Chiclayo, Peru. In 2020, he appointed him to the dicastery of bishops. In September 2023, he appointed him prefect of the same dicastery, the most decisive role after the Secretariat of State, the one that evaluates and recommends bishops for the entire Catholic Church, and created him Cardinal Deacon. On February 6, 2025, while Francis was still hospitalized at Gemelli, Prevost was promoted to Cardinal Bishop, a step that normally requires at least 10 years as a cardinal priest with a formal petition, skipped. Within 2 months, Prevost was already in the highest order of the Sacred College. On May 8, 2025, the conclave took place. 133 cardinal electors, the vast majority appointed by Francis in previous years. Then comes April 21, 2026, the first anniversary of Francis's death. Leo XIV writes these words in X. On the first anniversary of the birth into heaven of our dear Pope Francis, his words and gestures remain imprinted in our hearts. The real story begins here. Birth into heaven. In the Catholic tradition, this expression, dies natalis in Latin, is reserved for canonized saints. It is the term with which the Church indicates the day on which a saint definitively entered into the glory of God. That same term appears in the Roman martyrology next to the names of the saints, not next to the names of ordinary faithful. And it's not the first time. Already on the day of his inauguration, Leo XIV had said that Francis was smiling down on us from heaven. The source is Catholic World Report, April 21st, 2026. Twice, in less than a year of his pontificate. The crux of the matter is this: the Catholic canonization process takes years, often decades. It requires the formal opening of the cause, verification of the heroic nature of the virtues, and the title of venerable. Then beatification with a scientifically verified miracle. Then canonization with a second miracle. Not a single one of these steps is skipped. No formal cause has been opened for Francesco. No miracle has been examined. The heroism of his virtues has not been declared. Yet his successor places him in heaven, in language Catholic theology reserves exclusively for those who have already fully traveled that path. Language matters. The language of the Catholic magisterium and liturgy is never random. Every word carries a weight, built up over time. And the term birth into heaven, dies natalis, belongs to a specific vocabulary, that of saints declared as such by the Church after a long and verified discernment. Using it without due process is tantamount to rushing ahead on a path that exists precisely to protect the truth. And the question every Catholic is asking right now is, why does Leo XIV use that language? Theological ignorance, plausible, but hard to believe in a pope. Or is there something more precise? Because if Francis becomes a saint, even if only in common perception, even if only in the everyday language of his successor, then everything he did becomes untouchable. Amoris Laetitia, untouchable. Traditionis Custodes, untouchable. Fiducia, supplicans, untouchable. The agreement with China, untouchable. You don't criticize a saint. You don't correct a saint. You don't raise doubts with a saint. Every magisterial document by Francis acquires, in the collective imagination, a sanctity by association. And whoever dares to question that teaching becomes, in the eyes of many, someone who opposes a man whose successor has already declared him in heaven. And the consequences for those who defend tradition are enormous, because from tomorrow on, every time someone cites Amoris Laetitia to justify communion for divorced and remarried people, they will be able to add, "A saint wanted it." Whenever Traditionis Custodes is used to close a parish that celebrated the ancient Mass, it can be said, it is the will of a saint. The seal is definitive. There's a precedent in church history that traditionalists know well. John Paul I, Albino Luciani, died 33 days after his election in 1978. Many immediately wanted to open his cause for canonization. John Paul II slowed down the process, believing that haste was disrespectful of the seriousness of discernment. Luciani was beatified only in September 2023, 45 years after his death. The Church has always been wary of haste when it comes to declaring someone in heaven, because it knows that sanctity is measured over time, and because it knows that momentary enthusiasm has never been a good judge of eternal truth. Tradition's response is always the same. Holiness isn't decreed with a tweet. Holiness is recognized through prayer, over time, and through the patient discernment of the Church. And the Church, which has endured 20 centuries of heresies and crises, has always known how to wait, because the truth is in no hurry. It simply needs space to breathe. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.